Good evening, everyone. Today we begin the first episode of Surat Al-Anfal, entitled, Say, the spoils of war belong to God and the Messenger. Surat Al-Anfal is primarily a Medinan surah that was revealed after Surat Al-Baqarah, and after Al-Anfal, Al-Imran was revealed. What's left? The cow, the spoils of war, Al-Imran. This is the order of their revelation, not the same as in the verse, but rather the same as in the Quran. The cow, Al-Imran, women, the table. They named it Surah Bad because it was revealed specifically for the Battle of Bad. Why do other people call it Surah Al-Qaital? Because it described the events of the fighting that took place in the same raid. The Battle of Bad. What was the reason for the battle, my master? There was a caravan coming from the Levant. Who was leading this caravan? A man named Abu Sufyan ibn Harb. This caravan had 1,000 camels and about 1,000 men under the leadership of Sufyan, and they had 50,000 dinars with them, which was, by the standards of those days, a very large amount. Where were they coming from? From the Levant. What is the Levant? It is Palestine, Syria, Iraq, and Jordan. What is this area called? Sham, and they are coming, meaning they are laden with 1,000 camels, laden with all the blessings of God. Because this is the Levant, the region of civilization. They bring silk from it, they bring food from it, they bring everything from it, and they have 50,000 dinars with them. They come from Levant to the city, and where are they going? On Mecca. That's good, it's very nice. Keep in mind that this caravan belongs to the Prophet himself. Of course, when he knew that the caravan was coming, he ran to his friends and said to them, What? He told them to come quickly so we can seize the verse on the caravan. Keep in mind that this caravan, when it was going from Mecca to the Levant to trade and bring goods back, managed to escape from the Prophet and his companions barely. I mean, they got away from them with great difficulty. They also wanted to attack them and take whatever they had with them, but they got away. So they waited for them as they were coming back from the Levant with goods, loaded and stocked up, and they went out wanting to ambush them. So the Prophet rallied his companions and told them, Come on, let's go out to intercept this caravan. He said it exactly like this, Perhaps God will grant it to you as spoils, meaning he will give it to you, or grant it to you as booty, he will bestow it upon you. Al-Anfal here means the spoils, the war booty. You get it, come on, go out with me, maybe God will grant it to you as spoils. That is, he will give it to you as booty. They went out with him without any fancy gear, they went out barefoot. You get it. I mean, they just said, let's go, with no weapons, no preparation, nothing. They didn't expect that Sufyan ibn Harb would send a quick messenger to Quraysh to tell them what. They said, come help us. It never crossed the minds of those guys who went out barefoot. They never even thought about this at all. Anyway, when they went with the Prophet, it was to seize the caravan and everything in it. You get it, and to capture the people. The 40 men led by Sufyan ibn Harb, those same guys who went out barefoot, told the Prophet, No, we've heard that Amr ibn Hisham, meaning Abu Jahl, is coming with a massive army, so please allow us to leave, give us permission to go. He said to them, All right then, go in peace. What else can we do for them? So in the end, only 313 Muslims remained with the Prophet. And keep in mind, they only had 2 horses and 70 camels with them. The battle started there, around the well of Bad, which is between Mecca and Medina. Al-Hubab ibn al-Mundir said to him, O Messenger of God, let's stay near the water. Let's stay by the well of Bad. So who arrived then? Our uncle, Amr ibn Hisham. When the messenger reached him quickly on horseback, he came with 1,000 men and 200 horses. And for what purpose? To rescue Sufyan and the 40 men, and to confront the army of the Muslims led by the Prophet. The two armies met, and the fighting grew intense between them. So the Prophet, yes, God said to him, O Lord, grant me victory, and keep in mind, they were really in a tight spot. Amr ibn Hisham is coming with a lot of people, a lot of weapons, and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, the Prophet woke up and said to him, Rejoice, Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr was always by his side, always sticking close. He told him, God has sent down Gabriel with soldiers from the angels to help us, you know. So what happened is that, for some unknown reason, so the Muslims killed Amr ibn Hisham and 70 more of his soldiers, captured another 70, took the caravan as spoils, and the rest ran away. The rest of Amr ibn Hisham's 1,000 men? Yeah, they fled. Then the Prophet consulted his companions and asked them, So, what should we do with these 70 prisoners? Abu Bakr said, Let them pay a ransom. So the Prophet said to him, By God, I agree with the idea of the ransom. Umar said, No, they should be killed. So God sent down a verse that agreed with Umar's opinion. So, who did God agree with? With Umar's words and God's decision matched, opposite of what Prophet and Abu Bakr wanted. The verse was revealed. It was not for a prophet to have captives until he had thoroughly subdued the land. You desire the gains of this worldly life, and so on. And that's verse number 67. And when we get to it, we'll start to talk about it. The Muslims were the ones who started the aggression, and they were the ones who began the piracy. That's the issue. So, what weren't they doing? They weren't going out to spread the message. They were going out to ambush the caravan, loot it, seize it, and destroy it. They ask you about the spoils of war. Say, the spoils belong to Allah and the Messenger. So fear Allah, set things right among yourselves, and obey Allah and His Messenger if you are believers. The reason for the revelation of this verse. Some people said that the Prophet gave shares to people who didn't participate in the battle. So the verse revealed about those people. Among them Uthman ibn Affan, the Prophet's son-in-law. They said he gets share from the Prophet. He was absent because his wife was sick, not our concern. And keep in mind, his wife was the Prophet's daughter. So this is the first person, the one whom the Prophet. The second were Talha ibn Ubayd Allah and Sa'idi ibn Zayd. Those two were absent on a mission to spy on the enemy caravan. They were the ones who gave the Prophet inside information. They told him, it got away from us and it's on its way, let's catch it. Or, let's raid it when it comes back. Those were the ones who were, on the spying mission. All right, they were on a mission by order of the Prophet. So, the participants objected to this division and said, No, these guys didn't take part, and don't tell us that Abu Bint's wife was sick. And don't tell us that those two were on a spying mission by my order. Then the verse was revealed. The second reason is that the young warriors who fought alongside the Prophet and went on campaigns with him said, We were the ones who fought, we were the ones who killed, we were the ones who captured, the spoils belong to us. So, of course, the elders said, No, we also demand our share because we too were exposed to danger. The third reason is that Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas said, What did he say? He said that his brother was killed. His brother Umair was killed in the Battle of Bad. So I went and fought with it, who from Abu Jahl's side, or Amr ibn Hisham's. I went and fought with Sa'd ibn Alaz. So I asked the Prophet for permission to take Sa'd ibn Alaysa's sword as a keepsake. But the Prophet told him, "Put the sword with the spoils, Sa'd." That is, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, he told him to put it. He says, "As soon as I put the sword with the spoils, I had barely moved. Then the verse was revealed to whom? To the Prophet." The meaning is that God is telling the Prophet that the people who participated in the Battle of Bad will object to the division of what? The spoils. So you tell them that the ruling on dividing the spoils is left to God and the messenger, so that they accept your judgment. Because he also made them understand that faith is not complete except by obeying you, by obeying the Prophet, that is. And tell them to fear God and not to dispute because of what? The spoils. Who is the source here? Al-Raz's keys to the unseen. Some people asked, what exactly are these spoils of war, Al-Anfal, from God? There are no shares, God designates them, and they are allocated for the maintenance of the Kaaba and arming the army. So here's a question. Did they allocate God's portion of the spoils, or what? That is, for the maintenance of the Kaaba and arming the army, on what basis does he say, "Obey God and his messenger"? I believe that obedience should be to God alone. Why? Because obeying the messenger is considered associating partners with God. Since the messenger is nothing more than a conveyor of the message, nothing else. And by the way, there are 13 or 12 verses, I can't remember exactly, and I've shared them many times in previous episodes. The messenger's duty is only to deliver the message. Our messenger is only responsible for conveying, and the messenger's duty is to deliver. So, 13 times in the same wording, it affirms and is enough to deny any obedience to the Prophet. So, the believers or Muslims living in 2021, how are they supposed to obey the messenger when he's not even here? The second question is about the spoils of war. He didn't say half, or a fifth, or a quarter. He said, the spoils of war are all for God and the messenger. Let's compare here. Look, it says, a fifth belongs to God, the messenger, and those near of kin. That's in Al-Anfal 41, and we'll get to that later. So how come it's all the spoils? He said, the spoils are for God and the messenger. And then here, he specifies that a fifth is for God and the messenger. The next question, what's the difference between for God? Pay attention here. This is a very important point. It's this part in green. He said, the spoils are for God and the messenger. For God and the messenger. But when you get to verse 24 in the same Surah Al-Anfal, it says, respond to God and to the messenger, not and the messenger. What's the difference between the two? He says, if you are believers. So the question here is, does he not know whether they are believers or not? The next point to note is that God is mentioned twice, maybe. You might ask why. Say, the spoils are for God and the messenger. So fear God, that's one, and then obey God. Well, okay, but why not just say, obey him and his messenger? The believers are those whose hearts tremble when God is mentioned, and when his verses are recited to them, it increases their faith, and they put their trust in their Lord. The meaning is that the believers are those who fear God, the true believers. Meaning, if God is mentioned in front of them, they fear him when his name is brought up before them, or even when his verses are recited to them. And they are also the ones who entrust their affairs to God and hope for no one but him. Who is the source here? Al-Nukat Waluyun by Al-Mawardi. All right, my friends, I don't have a question or anything here. But here, the discussion is about God and the believers in the third person. He says, only the believers, meaning someone is talking about them. Those who, when God is mentioned, not when we are mentioned, or when I am mentioned, their hearts tremble. See, pay attention. Actually, I forgot to add the colors. And when his verses are recited to them again, someone is talking about them. The description is actually very clear, by the way. His verses increase them. They, yes, increase them in faith, and in their Lord they put their trust. So, the talk is about the believers and about God in the third person. Those who establish prayer and spend from what he has provided them. The meaning here is that this verse is connected to the one before it, and it describes the believers themselves as those who establish prayer, meaning they perform prayer at its proper times and give charity from the wealth that God has provided them in order to draw closer to God and obey him. Who is the source here? Bar al-Ulum by Samarkandi. Notice that in the previous two verses, the talk was about God. Here, he starts talking about himself, saying we have provided. Here, God uses the first person pronoun. Those are the true believers. They will have ranks with their Lord, forgiveness, and generous provision. What does this mean? It means that the believers mentioned in the previous verse, those who establish prayer on time and spend from what we have provided or given them, are the ones being referred to. These are the true believers. They have a very high status with their Lord, forgiveness for their sins, and will enter paradise. An ocean of knowledge, numbered. Just as your Lord brought you out of your home with the truth, even though a group of the believers were reluctant. The meaning here, my brothers, in this verse, the first opinion says to him, O Muhammad, just as your Lord brought you out of your home with the truth for fighting, conquest, and taking over the group, the caravan that we were after at first, dividing the spoils, is also your right. Keep that in mind, even if they dislike it. The second opinion says no. It tells him, just as your Lord brought you out of your home with the truth so you could fight, conquer, and take the caravan, you and the group with you, fighting was obligatory for them, but they truly disliked it. And then, here. Keep in mind that this word brought you out. So here, there are those who refer to God in the third person, the believers in the third person, and address the prophet in the second person. Who is the source here? It's Maralim al-Tanzil by al-Baghawi. The point being made here is that the believers in the prophet and in his message weren't confident in the way the spoils of war were being divided, even though they knew he was carrying out his Lord's commands. They argue with you about the truth after it has become clear, as if they are being driven toward death while they look on. Here too, in my opinion, there's an interpretation that says, God is telling him, O Muhammad, a group of the believers will argue with you about fighting on the day of Badr. Why? Because they went out barefoot. You see, just like we say weapons or something, like we said, so they'll ask you, why didn't you tell us there would be fighting, and that Amr ibn Hisham would come from Mecca with 1,000 men, so we could arm ourselves? And they'll ask you to give them permission and allow them to leave the battle. After it becomes clear to them that you are just carrying out your Lord's commands, and as if they're going to die in the battle. The second opinion says no. It says that God is telling him, O Muhammad, a group of the polytheists argue with you about monotheism, meaning The matter has nothing to do with the battle. Who says these two opinions? Zad al-Masir fi il-Multafsa by Ibn al-Jawzi. So the question here, brothers, is this: how does the Prophet call these people, these believers, to fight when they don't have any weapons? And what's even more astonishing is that God reproaches them in a verse 6, the one we're discussing, for their anger and their desire to leave. Naturally, the Prophet was supposed to tell them, by God, we're going to war. So people would have gone out prepared, but instead he brought them along unarmed, without any preparations, without anything. And in the end, God reproaches them and is angry with them because they left the battlefield. And remember, when God promised you that one of the two groups would be yours, and you wished that the unarmed one would be yours, but God wanted to establish the truth by his words and cut off the root of the disbelievers. Al-Bawqi quotes Al-Hassan as saying that this verse 7 we're talking about was revealed before verse 5. Yet, verse 5 is placed in the Quran before verse 7. That's according to his own account, of course. So what does it mean in verse 7 when he tells them to thank God? Why? Because he promised you the caravans, the camels, and the horses, that is, the caravan that was coming from the Levant, the one belonging to Sufyan ibn Harb. You get what I mean? And God promised you that, or the battle with Quraysh led by Amr ibn Hisham. You wanted the spoils, not the battle. But God wanted you to fight Quraysh so you could wipe them out. That's what this verse is about. One of the two groups means either the group with the spoils or the other group, or one of the two options. So let's put it this way. You wanted spoils, but God wanted you to fight to wipe out the other group. Which side weighs more? Who says it's about material things? Majma al-Bayan of Quran. Al-Dabrosi. Notice, the whole discussion is about God, all in the voice of the narrator. God promises you, meaning he himself. If we remove God here, it would be he, not we promise you. No, it's he promises them. Someone is talking about him, and God wants, pay attention, to establish, to cut off 4 things. 4 actions. Of course, he repeats God twice, like God, God. But I won't discuss the repetition. But here I have 4 actions where he talks about God in the third person, to establish the truth, to nullify falsehood, even if the criminals hate it. The meaning here is that God supports Islam by having the disbelievers killed at the hands of the Muslims. And what happened at Bad? So, what did the disbelievers do to you? I don't get it. These people getting goods from the Levant and heading back to their country. They didn't bother you, didn't come near you, nothing. They have nothing to do with you whatsoever. So, God is going to support Islam by having the disbelievers killed at the hands of the Muslims. How? I just don't understand this. The source is Al-Tashil Liulam Al-Tanzil, Ibn Juzay Al-Ghanati. The real question here is upholding the truth and supporting Islam supposed to be done by raiding and attacking the caravans of the disbelievers? When you called upon your Lord for help, and he responded to you, I will reinforce you with 1,000 angels, one following the other. The reason for its revelation, the reason this verse 9 was revealed, is that Umar ibn al-Khattab said the Prophet's army at Bad was about 300 or 313, and the army of the polytheists was about 1001. So the Prophet prayed to our Lord, saying, O Lord, fulfill for me what you promised me, and destroy this group of Amr ibn Hisham, Abu Sufyan ibn Harb, and all the rest. He kept praying and praying until Abu Bakr said to him, Enough pleading, O Messenger of Allah. Allah will surely grant you what he promised you. Then the verse was revealed, meaning that when the prophet prayed to his Lord, sought help, pleaded, and prayed at night, he asked for support and assistance. Gabriel descended with 1,000 angels on the prophet's right side. Then after him came Michael with 1,000 angels on the prophet's left side. So the Muslims defeated the polytheists. Who is saying this? Al-Jami Liakum Al-Quran by Al-Qurtubi. Here's the question. So why didn't God send his angels to the prophet to save him when he was on the verge of death at the Battle of Uhud? And by the way, Uhud happened a year after Badr. We want to understand, does God send angels in one battle and leave another? This was actually a very important question, because keep in mind, they wounded the prophet, broke his tooth, and blood was flowing. He was really close to the end. You see what I mean? Why didn't God send him angels in that way to save him, especially in the Battle of Uhud, where they were defeated and almost wiped out? This happened a year after Badr, just to clarify here, so he responded. You see, when you talk about God, he responded to you. But how exactly did that happen? I don't know. I just can't understand this point. So he responded, he is the one who supports you, that he supports you. So either I responded to you that I will support you, or he responded to you that he will support you. Okay, let me follow the context so I can understand. So he responded, he is the one who supports you with 1,000 angels, one after another. God. So now, is someone talking about him, or is he talking about himself? And God made it only as good news, and so that your hearts would be reassured by it. And victory is only from God. Indeed, God is mighty, wise. The meaning is that God did not make the support with these angels, the help he sent, 1,000 here and 1,000 there. Gabriel and Michael, that was just a sign for you of victory, so your hearts would be reassured. So, the meaning here is that the angels whom God sent 1,000 on the prophet's right and 1,000 on his left did not fight, but were there only as good news, reassurance, and to strengthen the believers, to encourage them. 313. His telling them these angels won't fight alongside you. All victory comes from God alone. These angels just appeared to boost your morale. So, who's saying this? Fath al-Qadir by al-Shakani. Okay, I have a question. What's the evidence angels fought or didn't fight, if no one saw them? Understand? There's no evidence. There's no evidence they fought, or that anyone saw or described them, not even from believers or the Prophet himself. Nothing reported that he described angels or what they looked like. Honestly, I wish we humans could have seen just one angel. It's not a big deal, we don't have to see God, but at least he could have sent us an angel to see. I mean, people could see him. The point here is that he's repeating himself, you know? Notice how he's talking about God in the third person. And he only made it, God only made it as good news. And then here, and victory is only from him, from God. Who is he? That's God, right? So, really, the talk about God is in the third person. And then you see God's name repeated 3 times in one verse, and God made it. And victory is only from God. That is God. Okay, let's take the last part. He is mighty, wise. So, it works. Honestly, I don't really know what the wisdom is behind the repetition in these verses. Honestly, I can't. There was something I wanted to say to wrap up this episode. But I really apologize for going on for so long, because that initial introduction was necessary so people could pay attention to the directions. Because the whole surah is built around the Battle of Badr. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in another episode. Goodbye.